Hi, this is Shane Starr, and today I'm having a really hard time finding a good place to do this video because it's a wonderful summer day in South Orange County in Southern California, and people are out, and I don't like doing my videos around a bunch of people. So, funny enough, today's video is on extroverted feeling. Um, the sixth video in a series where I combine my passion for typology and my experience in education and philosophy to help any of my viewers live their best life by targeting specific cognitive functions or Enneagram fixations to come later, for improvement using philosophical masterpieces as roadmaps towards our journey in self-actualization. So I've already discussed my method in other videos. We don't target our best or our worst functions or elements, but those ones in the middle, the ones where we are average, good enough to be okay and not good enough to be able to benefit from some practice or training in these areas. And to be more specific, those functions or elements are the tertiary and inferior functions in MBTI, which are the mobilizing and suggestive functions in Socionics, and then the eighth function, which is the so-called demon function in MBTI, and the role function in Socionics. How and why each of these are relevant, you can find in another one of my videos or in someone else's. You can always take the holistic approach by going after all of them and taking it from there and just using the information how you will. But more on extroverted feeling. If my MBTI typing is correct, this is maybe my worst function. And it's funny because I can be nice and I can even make people think that I'm better at this than I am. And maybe that's why in Socionics it's fitting as a role function, because it's like a mask. It's like something I don't really like, but I know how to do it if I have to, and I can subsist for a short period of time before it gets too tiring and I gotta go. At home we were watching the Terminator, the whole series, and in one of the earlier Terminators, they have someone approach the Terminator with kind of a comment, and the Terminator, in his eyes, it clicks like possible responses 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and lists them, and then he chooses one. And some people there were saying, Shane, that's exactly how you are. And I'm thinking, they're kind of right. That I've learned social behavior in a TE way. Like, I know how you're supposed to act. It doesn't come naturally. I can do it again, but it doesn't come naturally with a smile like it does for some people. So anyway, moving on. If my idea of defining these functions and elements is by taking all my trusted resources and cutting out the things on the edge, which is difficult with MBTI and Socionics together, because you could almost flip FI and FE around in some ways, and they're not the same in both systems, but they both deal with managing emotions, working in a group setting, having harmony, and I guess you would focus on positive social interactions, a positive environment. Socionics FE is more about emotional expression, emotional states. And I think the overlap between the two systems, where we can really talk about FE meaningfully and switch back and forth and still be on point, I would say emotional regulation. Because that has to do with setting group harmony, having positive social interactions, but at the same time, it's about managing your own reactions appropriately in a group setting. So think emotional regulation for both self and in group dynamics. Positive examples of this would include, joy, excitement, laughter, within reason, of course, enthusiasm, optimism, happiness versus grief, sorrow, anger, sadness, crying, shouting, frustration, pessimism, all those things. So that's just a little plus minus, which I think is sort of common knowledge. What are some examples of people who struggle with this function or element? The first thing is an insensitivity to other people's feelings or just being oblivious. And that can come in so many different ways. Someone's sad and crying and you don't empathize with them, or someone is happy and you don't get happy with them, or you're just kind of indifferent or oblivious to the mood in the room, so to speak. And you can be in a good mood and come in with a joke at a totally inappropriate time, or be having a bad day when everyone else is happy and dump on people when they're least in the mood to want to hear it. I would also say an over-reliance on a logical approach to relationships. In my typing session with talking with famous people, Eric was asking me, how do you deal with it when someone's really bummed about their rent price going up and you have to explain to them, and empathize with them. And I tell them, well, I talk about market realities, and I show them the graphs and I show them the pricing, and they can see that relative to market standards, even though it still sucks, I mean, we're all in the same boat. This is the pricing. So relative to the market, they're still getting a good deal. And that, I guess I was pretty much a TE answer instead of an FE answer. I think in other realms, this would be characterized by giving advice over help. Someone comes to you with a life-changing problem and you want to help them fix it instead of give them a hug, and I'm guilty of that to the max. Moving on, I would say bad FE is less attuned to the emotional atmosphere, a lack of understanding. Me reading a book at a party or something, or being on my phone, but a lot of people are guilty of being on their phones at a party, but I tend to isolate myself, and there's always some FE lead person coming up to me saying, "Hey, is everything okay?" And I'm like, "I'm fine. I'm good. Leave me alone." I would say also inappropriate emotional expression, and this can happen in spots. Like if someone asks me how I am, oftentimes I tell them, and we're not supposed to do that. Like someone will say, how are you doing? And I'll give them a list of 5 reasons why I'm having a difficult day. And no one wants to hear that. They want to hear, oh, I'm doing great. How are you? Thanks. Yeah, see you, When someone asks me, I take them at face value. It's like I don't know the nuance of social interaction enough to just know better. And see, I know better, but then in the moment I forget and I just tell them how I'm doing, and oftentimes that's stressed and uptight, and nobody cares and nobody wants to hear it. Last but not least, we've already touched on this, difficulty managing emotions, and I think a good example of this that I can share is like I'll be playing tennis and I hit the ball in the net and I get upset. I'll throw my racket down, pick it back up. It's like, okay, I'm ready for the next point. And everyone around me is like, oh, dude, are you okay? Maybe we should stop playing. It's like, dude, let's go with the next point. I'm ready, like, yeah, I threw my racket down. I'm good. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. I'm good. And everyone else is like kind of freaked out, like some demonstration of anger or something. To me, it was just a bam, I'm over it. A lot of times others around us aren't. I would say another example of difficulty managing emotions is, a lot of us with poor FE, I think, we don't share that much about ourselves, and then we get in a spot where we're supposed to talk about, and then we say too much. It's just difficulty knowing, you know, you don't want to, this is where being in the gray area is good. And if you have bad FE, you're either all black or all white. You don't know how to do the gray with style that well. And, that's something I think we can work on with practice. But, it takes work. So moving on to our philosophical masterpiece. Our author is a philosopher by the name of John Stuart Mill. He spent most of his life in London. I didn't study him much in college because, first of all, I didn't find ethics that interesting. And second of all, I liked the continental philosophers, starting with, Kierkegaard, Heidegger, Nietzsche, Sartre. I liked those guys. I didn't like the English guys, Hume and Locke and Mill so much. Not out of any antipathy or anything. I just wasn't as interested in their work. But I recognize that it's important work. And even though John Stuart Mill was an economist and a politician, as well as being a civil servant, he was very influential in the development of liberalism as we know it today. Social liberalism, political theory. He was probably the most influential English philosopher of the 19th century. The most interesting thing about this guy I found is he was literally a genius. Like, he learned Greek at age 3, Latin by age 5. His father and a guy named Jeremy Bentham, another famous philosopher, they taught him physics, foreign languages, philosophy of science, all when he was a young child. He had a very rigorous upbringing, academically speaking, at least. As far as his religious beliefs go, he maintained a strict agnosticism. So he wouldn't go along with atheism or theism. He wanted to stay in the middle, which I think common sense wise is a good place to be on the surface, because we don't know one way or the other, but also one has to admit that that's the answer that's most certainly wrong, because there is an answer, we just maybe don't know it. And if you stay in that range, you're wrong no matter what. It's like a coin is heads or tails. You can't choose in the middle, or you're wrong either way. You might as well pick a side. You're going to take a leap of faith either way. So anyway, more on the work we're doing today. We are looking at the philosophy and title of the work called Utilitarianism. This is the greatest good for the greatest number. And in fact, Mill argues in this masterpiece that the morally right action is the one that maximizes happiness and minimizes unhappiness for the greatest number of people. He refines this general theory by distinguishing higher from lower pleasures and goods. So if you have one good competing against another, like, I want the good of being healthy, I also want the good of this candy, which is the higher good. He has a calculus for that, and health is the greater good. So say no to the candy, even though it feels good in the moment. There's other ranks, and they include everything under the sun. So there it is, utilitarianism. The greatest good is the one that maximizes happiness for the greatest number of people. So the featured takeaway quote, I didn't have a hard copy of the book with me, but a couple. He says, the morality of actions depends on the consequences they produce, measured by the pleasure or pain, not merely the agent's own happiness, but of all concerned. That's on page 270 of his work. I think that's important with regards to FE, because it requires a stepping out of oneself and taking a look at the bigger picture, the greater group, the greater number. Another quote, it is not human life only that ought to be sacred to us, but human feelings as well, back to emotional regulation, which may be affected not only by one's actions, but by one's inactions as well. So you can do wrong by failing to act. And I think that makes common sense too. That's on page 278 of his book. So Summed up, utilitarianism is the greatest amount of happiness for the greatest number of people, the greatest good. And I think while this makes common sense, exactly how some actions measure up against others is still debatable. It always will be. The greater good, is the greater good going off to war or staying home to take care of your family? Like, how do you measure a greater good versus a more intense personal good? The greater good is greater, but the intense good is more important inwardly. I think some things resist pure calculus, and it's difficult, I think, to measure moral considerations in the way that Mill tries. But that's irrelevant for our lesson for today. Let's move on to what new perspectives we can find from reading this work, or at least reading some key parts of this work. I think the fundamental point and main contribution to our understanding of extroverted feeling from Mill is to gain the realization that we are part of something larger. Us individuals are part of a larger community. That can be our family, our employers, our communities, the world. It's all greater than us as an individual. I'd say both in a physical sense, in a historical sense, conceptual sense, and ultimately in an existential sense as well. We're part of a greater community. Again, even if that community is relegated to our family or group of friends, or work colleagues, a man isn't an island. Like, we need other people, and those of us with low FE tend to forget that. So as such, I think we would all do well to make adjustments in our behaviors to better fit in with these communities. And that's a work in progress for some of us. For others, it comes naturally. I think so. In short, to improve our FE, we need to improve our emotional regulation, first of all, and use that enhanced improvement to improve the appropriateness of our behaviors to fit in with the communities we're a part of. So get your own emotions better and use that to fit in with others better. Okay, so what do some of these changes look like? How can we practice this? I would say the first thing, in order to fit in better, you have to understand what better is. So watch for and keep track of the ways that people in your workplace interact with each other, the way that people in your family or home interact with each other. Norms and culture, something I do that's still weird to everyone I work with. I'm the only guy at work who wears a tie. Everyone else is like, yay, the company doesn't make us wear ties anymore. Shane, you don't really have to wear a tie. Why do you wear a tie? I don't know. It's like a uniform for me. It makes me feel more secure somehow, or more comfortable. And I always say, yeah, I'll quit wearing one. Then I never do, because personally, I feel more comfortable with the tie. That's just me. That's maybe my FI winning over my FE, or my weirdness winning over my TE. I don't know what, but maybe I should stop wearing a tie to better fit in. Okay. Read cultural values and operate according to them. Which values are supported by your culture, your city, your group of people you hang out with. I would say some little things you can do. Send cards to people for their birthday. Or send greetings to them for congrats, if they get a new job, or they get married, or have a baby or something. Some people, that stuff comes naturally to. Others of us, we have to put it on our list of things to do, else it doesn't occur to us to really go ahead and do it. Building relationships, invite someone to lunch. I mean, to me, I'd rather do a workout or something. I don't know. Someone asked me to lunch today, and I declined so that I could sit by myself and do this video. that's the challenge. That's the kind of work that I need to learn to adjust my behavior. I would say think of 4 or 5 people you have relationships with and reach out to them. Just say hi, see how they're doing. Work on your self-disclosure, not too little, not too much. Try to find what's appropriate and stay within that gray area. Work on meeting other people's needs. Do something to help your significant other if you have one, or someone at work. Ask, hey, do you need help with anything? That's something I'm learning. I'm doing better with that. Like I asked my supervisor, hey, do you need help with this? And I hoped he would say no. He didn't say no, so I ended up having to help, and then I had to second guess working on that FE. But I think overall, in the greater scheme of things, it was good for me to do. I would say work on creating group harmony. Try to fit in with people. If you see someone having a hard time, reach out to them. Ask someone if they're okay. I'm asking myself, when's the last time I ever asked anyone, hey, are you okay? Even though I've seen people struggle, it's like I see them struggle and I better not get involved in that, and maybe it's better to reach out, even if it takes us out of our comfort zone. I think it's good. I would say, especially if you have a significant other, take time to determine what they want or what they need. Don't be like the barber at a hair salon who cuts someone's hair the way they think that it should be cut. Listen to the client, listen to your partner, listen to your friend. What does he or she need? And then offer to do that instead of do what you think they need. And that's something I really need help with, because when I do help people, I tend to try to think, what do they practically need? And I should think more oftentimes, what do they want? Or even better, what did they ask for? When someone's moving or someone's sick, see if you can help. See if you can help take care of them. Think harmony. Think fitting in. Think the greater good. Not me personally, but what will help the greater community. I would say, even from a selfish perspective, there's an old saying in getting ahead with other people or with work or with life, it's not what you know, it's who you know that matters. And if I would have internalized that, I'd be so much further ahead in life now than I am. It's not what you know that matters, it's who you know that counts. Remember that. That's all I have for today. I hope that this has helped some of you. It's been therapeutic for myself, I think. Next up, we're going to do extroverted intuition and finish it with introverted intuition over the next 2 days. That's it. Peace out.